Hello, it's Jen. Welcome to Winrose Fiber Studio, where today we'll be crocheting cotton and linen beaded necklaces. For this project, you will need either a cotton or linen yarn. Of course, it can also be a blend, anywhere from a lace up to a sock weight yarn. It should be labeled a 1 or a 2. You're also going to need some beads, a 3.25mm crochet hook, a beading needle, a yarn needle, a pair of scissors, and 2 jump rings and a lobster clasp. If we look at yarn for a moment, this is Aunt Lydia's in a size 3. That would be great, up to a size 10. The pink and blue yarns that you see here are 100% linen in either fingering or lace weight. The rest of the samples I have here are more sock weight yarns, including the one that I'm going to be using today. I'm going to have some links for you below just to give you some options if you don't have anything in your stash. Today I'll be using Nettle Grove by Plymouth Yarn. I love this colorway for summer. When choosing beads, 4mm or 6/0 beads usually work just fine for this weight yarn, anywhere up to that sock weight yarn. You need to make sure that your beads will fit over your beading needle, and then it has to go over 2 threads of the yarn and onto the skein. As long as you have beads that have a large enough hole to fit onto your working yarn, you'll be just fine. Today, I'll be sticking with seed beads, but of course, you can have a lot of fun with your bead choice and add a little bit of personality to your necklace. Make it just perfect for you. If you're making this necklace for yourself, you can hold it up to your neck and make sure you're happy with the length. It's also helpful to have a way of measuring your necklace, and a basic ruler will do the job just fine. I have a simple tray here that I'm going to use to pull some selected beads for the project. Because the yarn I'm using has different colors in it, I'm going to pick beads that kind of play off the colors in the yarn. You can see that this yarn has some bright yellows. It also has sea greens and blues. So I'm just going to kind of have fun collecting some beads that I think will look really pretty on my necklace. I know that was a longer materials list, so I'm going to type it up and have it in the description below. And once again, I am going to include some links to help get you started if you need to do a little bit of shopping for your project. Before we start threading these beads onto our yarn, let's have a closer look at our project today. So we are making a necklace that consists of 5 strands. Each strand will be just a little bit longer than the one that precedes it. Also, each strand will have a total of 14 beads. So when you're threading your beads onto your yarn, you're going to need a minimum of 70 beads. Because we are likely using different yarn and different beads, the length of our chains or our strands may vary, and that's going to be okay. But because of that, I would like you to put a few extra beads onto your yarn in case you need more than 14 for each of your strands. If you're using a lighter weight yarn, you might need each strand to have 15 or 16 beads. So go ahead and put 80 to 90 beads on your yarn just to be on the safe side. As you can see, I'm using the tip of my beading needle to pick up the beads and thread them onto my working yarn. Because I know that 70 is a number that's going to work for me with the size beads and the size yarn I'm using, I'm just going to pick up a couple extra, and then I will meet you at the beginning of this project when we finally get to start to crochet. Here we are, and with our 3.25mm crochet hook in hand, we're ready to begin strand number 1. We're going to begin by chaining 7, and you can see that I sort of held on to the back loop of that very first chain, and that is a habit I've gotten into because it makes that stitch very easy to work into. The next thing we're going to be doing, in fact, is working a slip stitch in the 7th chain from our hook. Now we've created our beginning loop, and we're going to start creating the length of this strand by chaining 6. And you can see that I'm making these chains not too loose, nice close chains here, and then I'm going to draw up my first bead. We're going to secure each bead with a chain stitch. After that, we are going to chain 6. The repeating pattern that you're going to get very comfortable with as we're making this necklace is as follows. You're going to draw up the next bead. You're going to attach it with a chain stitch. And then you're going to chain 6. One thing you might notice is that it can help to elongate that loop on your hook a little bit to allow it to work around the bead. And then after I work the chain stitch to attach the bead to our chain, sometimes I cinch that chain stitch just a little bit to tighten it up around the bead before I work my chain 6. So let's look at it one more time. We're going to draw up the bead, work our chain stitch, cinch it down just a little bit, and then work our chain 6. Let's have a look at strand number 1 so far. And it's easy to keep track of your place in the pattern because you can simply count the number of beads that you have on your strand. There will always be a bead attached by a chain stitch and then an additional chain 6. I am going to continue on working strand number 1. I'm spending a little more time on this first strand than I will on the following strands, just so you have a chance to watch it quite a few times and get really comfortable with the repeat that we're going to be using throughout this entire project. As you can see, the directions have me repeating this section a total of 14 times. I will meet you at the end of those 14 repeats, and then we'll finish off strand number 1. As you can see, I still have a few more beads to go, but I'm going to go ahead and time travel to the very last bead, which I'm now going to attach with that chain stitch. And then I'm going to do the last chain 6, so I'm finishing up the 14th repeat. And then we're going to have a look at strand number 1 so far. This is where you can really adjust your sizing. Now you may be using a yarn that's a different weight from mine. Your beads might be larger or smaller, so you're going to want to measure the length of your strand. You don't need a special beading board like the one I have here, but this illustrates the length really well. You can see that the length of each side is right about at 8.5 inches, so that's going to give me a total of 17 inches. The lobster clasp and jump rings will account for an additional inch. I want this first strand to be right about 18 inches in length. If yours is longer or shorter, you can add or subtract the number of repeats to achieve the length that you're looking for your necklace. Once you're happy with your length, we can go back to our instructions and finish off strand number 1 by working 7 more chain stitches, and then we're going to slip stitch in the 7th chain from the hook one more time, and this creates a loop on the opposite end of the necklace. I also want to take this opportunity to say that if you're struggling at all with making strand number 1 the length that you want it to be, please ask me questions in the comments below. I'm so happy to help you get the necklace just the way you want it. Strand number 1 began with a loop. It contains 14 beads or the number you needed to achieve your desired length, and then it has a loop on the opposite end. Now we can pick up where we left off with strand number 2. Strand number 2 begins by chaining 9. You may note that this is 3 more chains than we used at the beginning of strand number 1, and it's these extra chains that are going to make strand number 2 just a little bit longer. Once you have completed your chain 9, it's time to start that repeating pattern all over again. You slide up a bead and attach it with a chain stitch, and then you chain 6. You're going to do this the same number of times that you did it for strand number 1. I am doing this repeat 14 times. I did 14 times on strand number 1, and so I'll be doing 14 times again on strand number 2. I'm not going to spend quite as much time showing you the repeat because we're doing exactly the same thing over and over again. Instead, I'm going to go ahead and travel to the very end of strand number 2 and work my very last bead. Here we are, we're attaching it with that chain stitch, and then we're going to chain 6, and that completes my 14th repeat. At the end of that chain 6, we're going to work 3 more chain stitches. This will give us 9 stitches on the opposite end of the chain, just like it had at the beginning. Now we need to go ahead and attach it to the opposite loop. Make sure that your chains are not twisted, and just insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, and pull through 2. So we're joining strand number 2 to that loop with a single crochet. Now we're ready to move on to strand number 3. Strand number 3 begins with a chain 12. Once again, this is 3 more chains than the previous round, and it's going to make strand number 3 just a little bit longer. In the description below, I have written out the completed measurements for each of the strands in this project. The length of each strand is also in the directions up on your screen. I'm just going to go ahead and work a few of the repeats to get started with strand number 3 before I travel to the end of this 3rd strand. Here I am attaching my 14th bead, and then I'm going to chain 6. And then, as the directions say, I'm going to work 6 more chains. There will be a total of 12 chains at the beginning and end of strand number 3. And now it's time to attach this strand to the opposite loop. Once you have more than 2 strands, they really can get a little tangled up on you. Take an extra minute to line up your necklace. Make sure your strands aren't crossing over each other before you attach strand number 3 to the opposite loop. So you can see I'm kind of separating strands number 1 and 2 and making sure that they're laying in order. There's 1 and 2, here's 3, and now I can pick up that opposite loop and attach the 3rd strand with a single crochet. Once again, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, and yarn over, pull through 2. Now we're ready to jump on to strand number 4. Strand number 4 begins with a chain 15. After you complete those 15 chains, we're going to dive back into our repeating pattern by sliding up a bead, attaching that bead with a chain stitch, and then chaining 6. I'm going to get to work on strand number 4, and I will meet you at the end of this strand and we'll finish it up together. Here I am on that last repeat of strand number 4. I've just attached my bead, so I'm working my chain 6. And now I need to work 9 more chain stitches, and then I'll be joining strand number 4 to the opposite loop with a single crochet. Of course, I need to take just a minute and make sure none of my strands are out of order before I attach strand number 4. Okay, I think we are good to go here, so I'm going to go ahead and pick my crochet hook back up, pick up that opposite loop, and join strand number 4 with a single crochet. Once again, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, and with that, strand number 4 is complete, and we're ready to move on to strand number 5. Strand number 5 begins by chaining 18. Once you have completed those 18 chains, you know the drill, we're back into our repeats. Go ahead and start sliding up those beads, attaching each one with a chain stitch, and then afterwards you work that chain 6. I will meet you once again at the end of this strand for the final steps. I'm just finishing up strand number 5. Here is that final chain 6, 4, 5, and 6, and now I need to work 12 more chain stitches, and then I'll be joining strand number 5 to the opposite loop. First, let's get all of these strands in order. Now we can pick up the opposite loop. We'll go ahead and attach this final strand with a single crochet, and now we can actually cut our working yarn. I'm going to yarn over and pull through the final loop on my hook. And then we have completed the crocheting portion of our project, and now it's time to weave in our beginning and ending tails. I'm going to go ahead and take a yarn needle and thread on one of the ends. I'm just going to work this thread underneath those joining single crochets and go back and forth. So this is my second pass, and then just for extra measure, I like to do a sewer's knot. I like to just put my needle under one thread And then before I pull the yarn all the way through, I insert my needle through that loop and pull tight. And now I'm just going to put my needle through those single crochets one more time, kind of cinch it so that they're all nice and close together before I cut this working yarn. And then I'm going to repeat this exact same process for the other side. You can see I have my necklace laid out nice and neat, and now it's time to attach our findings. The great thing about using 8mm jump rings is that you really don't need any special tools. You can just twist them open with your hands, and then I'm slipping on the lobster clasp, and then I'm slipping the loop over the opening in the jump ring, and then I can just twist that jump ring and close it back up. For the other side, I just need to attach the jump ring, so I'm going to twist it open. Put my second loop through that little opening in the jump ring and then twist it closed once again. Then I can attach my lobster clasp to the opposite jump ring, and there is our closure. Here we are at the end of another project together. I really hope you enjoyed this one. I think these necklaces are so fun to make, and I really tried to present it in a way that would make it very easy for you to play around with and customize. Of course, you could make it with a different number of strands. You can make the strands any length that you want. You could use all sorts of beads. So there's just a lot of possibilities here. I just want you to have fun, make this pattern your own, and let me know how it goes in the comments below. If you did enjoy this project, please hit like and subscribe. I'm a little channel, so when I see people click that thumbs up, it really means a lot to me. I post new videos every Tuesday, and I just want to thank you for watching today. I'll see you next time.